I mean, I really wanted to go to all the parties, but then I just couldn't help myself but be this like slightly weird, like I wanted everything I owned to be really old, and like that wasn't cool. I loved that so much that was more important to me, like wearing like an old grandpa jumper and having like everything feeling like an artifact, I think. Officially I say I'm a graphic designer. I'm not really sure I am. I'm kind of an illustrator. I do a bit of very lo-fi animating. I do a bit of image making. Officially I'm probably an illustrator, but I'm just living in this disguise of graphic designer because that's what I studied at uni. Growing up, it was a really creative environment for me and my brother. There was always whatever piece of kit we needed to do, you know, big portraits of each other or drawing on the table, making things out of, I don't know, whatever we could find. The thing that probably pushed me towards more like design thinking is probably the importance that my family put on making birthday cards for each other. Homemade birthday cards are a complete like necessity in our family life and celebrated, and they're this thing where we all come together and we try and touch on some kind of like private joke or something that's recently happened in their life or something, and think about how we can make that work and like what mediums to use. And I mean, as a child, it started off with probably just like a scribble and like, oh, mum likes this flower. But then it kind of got, as the years go on, the concepts get kind of more creative. And I remember there was one for my brother's 18th birthday. My mum let me have a day off school because I wanted to make him a book instead of a birthday card. And she thought, yeah, that is a fair enough reason to miss a day of school. I was really interested in like handwriting from an early age. In year 3, you got to upgrade from pencil to pen. And I had this way of writing which was kind of quite like my mum's style of handwriting, kind of like pointy and playful. And I thought it was great. I was really pleased with myself. But the teachers didn't like it. It wasn't this like taught handwriting style which is all rounded and kind of, I mean, maybe it was messy in some way, but I was the second to last person in my class to get a pen. But I already had formed, like looking back, I'd already formed such a distinct feeling about handwriting and how it should look. And I did not want it to look all rounded and soft. I wanted this like jaggedy writing style. And then from there, I think I started to get into like forging signatures. That was my passion for a while, was getting all my like family friends, all the grown-ups in my life to do their signature, and then I would copy it. Me and my friends, well, me and my one friend actually, would make like definitely we're a bit too old to be doing this. I think we were like 14, so everybody else was like drinking in the park, but we were making typewritten letters to the Prime Minister with like calligraphy envelopes. They were stamp sealed and they were like these beautiful artifacts. We were just chatting shit, like using the typewriter. But it was like getting into like ephemera and how you make something that looks like a kind of artifact and stuff like that. That was really starting to like, I don't know, open up the world of design for me. I'm a big fan of Matisse. Any paper cutout by Matisse is pretty much my kind of thing. I'd really like to go and visit. I think there's a chapel or something, a Matisse chapel somewhere. I'd like to go there. Matisse stuff was really influential for me, and a bit of Picasso, that kind of thing. But I remember I got a magazine when I was younger, I think called Rap magazine. I was probably 17. And there was a studio called Atelier Bingo, a French studio. They did, again, paper cutouts, these really beautiful, loose shapes. Kind of childlike almost. There's this sweetness, but also really graphic. And I remember seeing that and something feeling like it was blooming in my mind, I don't know, something being unlocked. And then I would also say my brother is definitely a major influence on me, and how we collaborate together, that's also definitely an influence, this like playful back and forth, like a relay of ideas. I was already so excited before I got to uni about these things we were going to be asked to do, new ways of thinking and stuff like that. One of the things was you had to make like a printed document which listed every person you'd ever known or something. And just this idea that you have to sit down and think about that and write that out, and what's that going to look like? And suddenly you start looking at the world in this different way. And that was one of the best things about uni, I think. it meant that walking up a street was a totally different experience, because I was looking at all the signage, or looking at, like, you know how like an off license will have like only 2 customers come in at one time please, but it's all handwritten, and everything started to feel so like emotive, and I don't know, like everything was a potential design thing that I could like put in my back pocket. I love using sketchbooks now, but it wasn't always like that. I used to be really stiff with sketchbooks. I would like draw something on a separate piece of paper and like stick it in. It was more like the kind of presentation scrapbook, very neat, very rigid. And then when I was on my art foundation, one of my tutors said, yeah, like your work's, it's good, but I feel like you could be a bit more free in your sketchbook kind of thing. And I hated that, because I was like, I've got the neatest, best sketchbook. I put the most work into it kind of thing. And she said, yeah, why don't you, have you ever thought about making your sketchbook out of clay? And I could not handle this. And I took this home with me, and I said to my mum, I was like, guess what she said? She said, should I make my sketchbook out of clay? And we, you know, laughed at it and thought it was ridiculous. And then it sat with me for a bit, and I was like, oh, she's kind of right. Like, I'm not using it as a sketchbook. It's not a place for ideas. It's a place, I'm using it like a sort of PowerPoint presentation. So after that, like I started to try and, you know, loosen up a little bit. I just find that if it's a place where sort of anything goes, then ideas will just pop up and it's more free and stuff like that. I had another tutor also on that course who said to me, design never starts with a laptop, it starts with a pencil. And that also really stuck with me. So I think now when I start a project, I'm always trying to get as far away from my screen as possible. My crack, a centerfold illustration, was really fun to make. It was kind of like an open brief. And I tried loads of different things. I think I was paper weaving at one point. I was kind of just exploring, having fun with how to make this graphic. But I think I knew I wanted something that was going to be kind of like a standalone shape, and also kind of unlike other things I'd done. A lot of my work is led by the animated element. So much of it is dictated by how it will move. Whereas this was like one of my first, it was just going to be a static piece. So I was thinking about it more in terms of like an illustration. The funny thing with the scarf is that I'd never designed anything for like a digital knit before, and I got into my head, I was like, I've got to design something that I would wear. So I designed this thing which was like totally unlike anything I'd ever done, because it was a scarf that I wanted to exist in the world, and I sent it off and they were like, this is so weird. This doesn't look like anything you've ever done. Why have you done that? So then they were like, do you mind having another go? And I was like, oh, okay. That scarf's never going to exist. And then I had another go and I made it look more like my type of work, which is like a bit more typographic, but illustrative, and they all kind of like link together. One side says yes and one side says no, because I thought, I know I could have different colours, so I was like, maybe it can be kind of like a voting scarf in some way. And I sometimes think about it as like, if I'm wearing the yes side, you can talk to me. But if it's a day where I don't want to talk to anyone, the no side comes on. Not that anyone would know that, but in my head. Because we spend so much time on a screen, and I miss that feeling of touching paper, so I want everything I make to evoke that feeling at least, even though you're just looking at pixels. Instagram's it's a funny place for work to exist, and but I feel like you have to get off it a lot of the time to feel creative. So some things are like, you can see something on Instagram and feel inspired, but it feels a bit short-circuited for me to look at it too much. I think my feeling with trends is it's really easy to get swept up in it, especially if like your work only exists on Instagram, or like that's mainly where it gets its airtime. They don't really make me feel creative. They make me feel like, I don't know, I'm kind of dancing the same dance as everyone else, which is, you know, fine every once in a while, but I don't feel like an inventor when I'm succumbing to a trend. My favourite thing is like experimenting with a new medium and creating a new recipe for work, which feels new and personal. It's a funny one. I do get swept up, definitely, but I prefer to kind of go my own way, I think.